Hi, I'm Joe Chianakas, author of Rabbit in Red. I get asked a lot, what is Rabbit in Red about? So here's a quick summary for you of the first book in the series that I hope you'll be willing to share with your friends and family who love the kind of stories that I love. Rabbit in Red is a fiction trilogy that celebrates the horror genre. I grew up in all things Stephen King and scary movies, and I always wanted to contribute to that world. So at its core, picture Willy Wonka, but for scary movies. And the third and final book in my horror trilogy comes out this fall, just in time for Halloween, called Bury the Rabbit. So let me tell you a little bit about the series. It starts with this eccentric billionaire, aren't they all, named JB, who runs Rabbit in Red Studios, which is the biggest horror movie empire you could possibly imagine. And he invites people to become a part of the industry they love, to help make horror movies, a new generation of creators. To get there, first, you have to complete a series of riddles, demonstrating how much you know about horror movies. And 19 teens ultimately get invited to Rabbit in Red for a hands-on competition. Once they get there, though, you realize that each character has horror in his or her own history. One's father was murdered by a home intruder. One's uncle committed suicide. One was bullied by his peers. Another was bullied by his parents. And you might put together that maybe the people who won the riddles, maybe it's really not all that random, and they're there for another reason. Well, once they get to Rabbit in Red, though, the games are pure fun, at least to start. They get to reenact some of their favorite horror movie scenes, again, in part of these competitions. So, for example, imagine reenacting the famous scene in The Evil Dead where Ash cuts off his arm, and how well can you remember that scene? But then there's another round where they have to save some of the famous victims that were killed off in horror movies. So if you're like me, I always think about the first Scream movie when Drew Barrymore's character Casey was killed off, and I think it was such a shocking scene at the time. And what would you do if you were a character in that movie? Could you save her? Do you know the environment and the story well enough to save her? Could you manipulate that situation? From there we get a little bit darker. What would you do to kill some of the final girls or guys that survived? So imagine being thrust into the mask of Michael Myers and say, go get Laurie Strode, and how quickly can you get her based upon what you know about the movie? All of that's done through 4D virtual reality technology at Rabbit in Red, and each challenge gets a little bit darker and more twisted as we go. But it's not just about the horror in the movies, it's also about the horror in their own lives. JB makes them reenact their greatest fears. Can Bill save his father from getting murdered? Can Jamie stop her uncle from committing suicide? Can Bill stand up to the bullies in high school? And so on. And in all of these tests, does this eccentric billionaire JB go too far? Furthermore, the loser in each of these games ends up missing, creating a deeper mystery, a game within a game. And is it just that, though? That's the big question, because when Bill and Jamie start to get a little bit deeper in Rabbit in Red Studios, well, you'll find out they get shot at, they get chased at by someone with a sledgehammer, and things get a little bit too real. Of course, that's what's fun for me. But they have to show how much they know real horror to save their friends. In the end, what's it all for? What's it all about? Well, at the end of the first book in the series, it's really about, spoiler alerts, so pause here if you don't want it, it's about an admission to see if they're worthy for this really dark, new Rabbit in Red Studios. And they're going to go to an even darker place in the second volume of our trilogy called Burn the Rabbit, where we take horror to an entirely new level. Will the survivors of Rabbit in Red choose to come back? And what scares do we have for you in book 2? Well, if you haven't started the series, now's the perfect time to do so. The first 2 books are available anywhere. Call your favorite local bookstore, ask them to order them for you if they don't stock them, or go online, barnesnoble.com, amazon.com, get the app TAPAS for digital reading. You can get them basically anywhere, and then celebrate the release of the third and final book in the trilogy with me this Halloween. Thanks.